Hi, I'm Natalie Gawkner. This is Both Sides of the Aisle. I represent the political center and have in the studio with me my friends John Dougal on the right.
Hey, how are you? Good to be with you. I'm over here on the right.
And Shireen Gurbani on the left.
Hello, and hey, listeners. Glad you're sticking with us.
And we're recording from the studios at the Kempsey Gardner Policy Institute, and there are graphs.
We call
in
it
the room.
the mansion.
The mansion. But I'm seeing the housing price index and Utah minority population shares and the components of population change. Welcome to the Gardner Institute, you two.
Hey,
That's right.
Good to be here.
Oh, but I don't like to do this, but we're going to start international and go global and go back to Gaza.
Go big.
Yeah, go back to Gaza. And, you can't hear news reports these days coming from Gaza without talking about hospitals.
Yeah.
And Shireen and John, what you're hearing is that these hospitals are not only having patients on the, above ground, but underground. There's tunnels and Hamas control centers. John, what do you do with this?
I mean, this makes it very difficult for the Israelis if they're going after Hamas, and yet they've planted themselves with innocent civilians around them.
Sick civilians too, right? Newborn baby civilians.
Yes, yeah, it just makes it really difficult because you're trying to go after those that attacked you, but it's a very difficult situation and stuff. I noticed that while some were calling for a ceasefire, the Israelis have said that there will be 4-hour pauses in between the fighting. So not ceasefires, but 4-hour pauses. They'll give a 3-hour warning so civilians can move where they're at before attacks take place to try and help protect them. So I think those are good steps in the right direction to allow you to execute the military action you need to protect your country and try and minimize harm to those that are innocent in the way.
Yeah. Shireen, commentary from the left. And as I say that, you've got Biden basically asking for less intrusive action and that hospitals must be protected.
Yeah, hospitals absolutely must be protected. And I think one of the things that's exceedingly complicated about this is you don't decant a hospital, you don't move people out of a hospital a couple of hours at a time, right? Mm-hmm. It's incredibly logistically complicated. People are in high-risk situations when we think about what's happening, especially half the population in Gaza is children, and thinking about there's been reporting on infants in incubators not having power to keep those kids alive. Mm-hmm. So this is a highly orchestrated process to be able to actually move people out of harm's way if we're talking about a hospital setting. But this is really part of a bigger picture of just ongoing devastation and true hell that people are living through.
Yeah. Shireen, I'll bet you worry like I do about attacks on U.S. forces that this could help the war to spread.
Certainly. And we're seeing escalation on many fronts, right? Certainly rhetoric is kicking up, but also attacks on U.S. I would say pieces of infrastructure of our military. And this is, again, I think, in recent reporting, what Hamas is saying they're trying to do is reset the game board, right? Mm-hmm. And to do that, I don't know that they care how many people are harmed in the process. So it just is a really tense time. It's a scary time in this region for sure.
Terrorist organizations have it easy compared to civil society.
Yeah.
Because they can just sit there and cause all sorts of trouble. Yeah.
Well, and being in the military is a dangerous business, even if you're not at war. I mean, there was the helicopter that was midair refueling that crashed and killed various service members. And that was just a training operation and stuff like that. And so just the nature of the business is dangerous.
All right. Meanwhile, we have the 2024 presidential election that continues to gather steam. We had more debates this week. This most recent one was in Miami, Florida. Of course, the former president, Donald Trump, chose not to be there. It was a good debate. But since the debate...
it was a good debate. How do you think it was a good debate?
That Nikki Haley did well, from my perspective.
There you go. Well, I just want to know the metrics.
Yeah.
I was disappointed because there were some things I have concerns with the fiscal dynamics of Social Security. And it just seemed like they were all largely in denial about things. Wanting to refuse even talking about raising the age. And I don't see any problem with saying 20-year-olds, you're going to have to be older to retire to get it. I mean,
I'm with
that's
you.
just.
But I think that's the posture that Nikki Haley takes. So come join that with me if you want, John. But I'll also say that it seems like a sideshow.
It does,
right?
Yeah.
and so I mean, what do you do? And then you have Tim Scott dropping out. So you have the
we have
field's
Mike
getting
Pence
smaller.
drop out, and now we have Tim Scott drop out. So
Yeah.
it's winnowing down, it's narrowing, and he admitted he had a positive message, but he said clearly my message isn't the right one at this time.
Yeah.
So let's be really clear. Why is this a sideshow?
Because of Donald Trump, yes.
Yep. And
yeah.
he's unwilling to participate. He has said he is also not going to participate in the next debate. He is showing up in courtrooms that he doesn't need to be in. He's doing other things. He's holding rallies at the same time. So he is available to engage in these debates. He is choosing not to. And I think what's particularly complex fallout of that is that we have these candidates on stage then going after each other, debating each other, when the person that they need to be truly running against is kind of absent. I don't know if you're feeling
And they're
that
not,
too.
and they're not talking about him.
Right.
I mean, you would think that all 4, 5, 6, however many are on the stage at any given debate would be attacking
Okay, but
the front runner rather
Governor
than each other.
DeSantis, in this most recent debate, went after Donald Trump in a way I hadn't heard him do before. And he essentially said, you didn't build the wall. You know, you didn't uphold a lot of your promises, and you should be here explaining it. I thought he did all right. But the bigger issue for me is just understanding, how does this all unwind? And Shireen, I think it's unfair to ask you to comment on it on the Republican side, but you seem to know.
Come on, Shireen.
Well, you seem to know things like this really well. But so I'll look at John, but Shireen, you jump in if you want. Take us through the timeline. Like, when is Iowa? When is South Carolina? When can we see whether it's collapsing on just Donald Trump or whether there's a hope for people like me that want a Nikki Haley Youngkin ticket or a Nikki Haley Tim Scott ticket?
I think your hopes about the Youngkin ticket just went away a week
Okay,
ago
'cause
with the election there in Virginia. Did not go his way, and I think that said that his future right now in this cycle is gone. I think even as a vice presidential candidate, he wasn't able to deliver and get control of the House and the Senate in Virginia. I think the key timeline. I mean, we talk about Iowa, we talk about New Hampshire, and then you got Super Tuesday, which is the beginning of March.
Yeah.
And so that is, I think, really, I mean,
That's when you start to know.
That's when you're going to know.
And
You're going to have
that's
one or
when-
two races before, and that may be a kind of sort of indicator, but that Super Tuesday will be the date I think we'll really know whether or not Trump is taking his popularity in the polls and translating it into votes.
I tell people I'm more a public policy expert than a politics expert. So I really sometimes I'm rough on these things. But my recollection is that South Carolina and Super Tuesday is where it became evident that he was the guy.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
after losing Iowa, for Biden, right? New Hampshire as well, I believe. And then I think, yes, so this is going to become clear in early next year. But I think that there's kind of this sort of like looming issue of Trump. What is going to happen with his legal troubles if he is, if we're talking about kind of these accelerated trials that are happening, there are really serious consequences that could befall from that. And I just don't know how this continues to work if he's, in further legal trouble.
These are my two big surprises. Okay. Number one, where are the Democrats in terms of putting up a candidate that's more competitive than President Biden?
Okay.
And the second one is, where are the Republicans, the moderate Republicans, in dispensing with Donald Trump once and for all? Can either of you answer either of those? Because it's so evident.
I can talk about the no.
Well, it's so evident to me that there's a better future for this country, and people know that. People with power know that, and if they unify, they could ensure that future.
So part of the challenge.
Where's President Bush?
Part of the challenge.
Where's Dick Cheney? Where's even locally Mike Leavitt? Where are the people that know better than to let Donald Trump come into office again?
Well, I don't know the answer to that question. I was going to say, with the rank and file folks, those that are opposed to Donald Trump, they're split. Some are with Ron DeSantis. Some are with Nikki Haley. Some were with Tim Scott. Some were with Vivek. Some were with Chris Christie. And so they're split. So I think if they unify together, they would be the majority in opposition to Trump. But right now, deciding who to coalesce behind is still difficult. I mean,
we've seen this story before.
And winnowing, yes. So it's winnowing more than it did back in 2016. But still, you've got, what the last debate had 5 folks on the stage, not counting Trump, who didn't show up.
Mm-hmm.
So you have Tim Scott drop out. So now you're down to 4, but that's still 5 people five major
Yeah.
players, if you will, in a primary,
And
that splits a lot of ways.
The gap is still so large between the top of those candidates and Donald Trump. How about on the D side?
So here's what I would say. I think that, if people want to talk about concerns about Joe Biden's age, you have to look at what's happening with Trump out on the campaign trail at his rallies. The kind of confusion that's coming out of his mouth
Is it 4 years that separate them?
Not even, I don't
Okay,
think.
okay.
So these are two very old politicians. That's just the case. But I think what I would ask people to do is to really look at what kind of policies and what kind of government has been advanced by Joe Biden. Right now, at this point, Democrats are in line. We're not the party of chaos. And so we're looking to stand behind our leader who has gotten amazing legislation passed for this country. The Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Week that President Trump promised forever and never delivered on. All of those things were able to come together under Biden because he is able to work and he gets things done for this country. So yeah, I understand people's concerns about age, but I would just ask them to look at the results.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the viewpoints. We're going to take a brief break. I'm Natalie Gochner with Shireen Gorbani and John Dougal. Stay tuned, everybody.
Shireen Gorbani on the left.
John Dougal on the right.
Natalie Gochner in the political center, and this is both sides of the aisle. John and Shireen, we just talked about the 2024 presidential election cycle. We have to.
Partly talked about it. Who knows? Maybe there's more to happen.
There's more. Well, we need to talk about Joe Manchin because he's made clear that he's not going to seek re-election in the Senate. He's in a very Republican state, but a Democrat. And so, a lot of people think he wasn't re-electable. But there's so many concerns that he's going to enter as a third-party candidate under the no labels tag, and that it will either ensure that Donald Trump becomes president or ensure that Joe Biden becomes president, depending on where you are. But Shireen, where are you on this one?
So I think that would depend on this sort of fictional ticket of no labels. They are saying in the new year they will say what they're going to do. But I guess for me,
Have they reached out to call you?
Yeah, they have been asking, but they know that I'm probably labeled at this point. But I think that there's a question about what does that ticket look like? We saw Joe Manchin appear with Huntsman, right?
Yeah. This is our former governor, John Huntsman.
Our former governor, who I think is considered to be a moderate. I think that's fair to say, Republican.
That's fair. I'm telling you, a Manchin Huntsman ticket would get my vote.
I believe you. Not mine. But I do think that we have. So what we have
She's
here
is there for Joe.
How far right or left would this ticket look, depending on what the ticket was, and then thinking about what is that? How does that land in the few states, unfortunately, where it really matters, right? So we're talking Wisconsin,
That's the right
Pennsylvania,
calculus.
Arizona. So what did those
Georgia.
candidates look like there? And I have to say, Joe Manchin doesn't seem like a winning name for me in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, in Arizona. Certainly some of the other ones may make it more interesting, but I don't really see a way forward for him.
You know who's a winning name for me is John Huntsman because of his international prowess at a time when you need that. I interacted with him last week, had a lunch with him and his wife, and he was just amazing what he was able to impart. This was with Arthur Brooks in town, and I just happened to have a visit with him. But
Former ambassador of both China and Russia.
Yeah, you can't get any better.
Yeah.
And then, having experience in the State Department and in Singapore and being a governor. But here's the thing, John. I know you're not a Donald Trump fan. You've said that on this program before. What happens in this country if we get 4 more years of Donald Trump?
I think, unfortunately, we get a lot of chaos, and I don't believe we'll get a lot of conservative principles coming through, a lot of conservative policies. And
So we lose 4 more years.
We lose 4 more years.
Yeah,
and
I
I
tend
look
to
and
agree with
say,
you.
well, we had some good things that happened under his first administration. There were a lot of promises that weren't kept, a lot of things that were not conservative from my perspective. Spending went out of control. Then I throw in 4 years of what I consider disaster with Joe Biden. And then I look and say, okay, 4 more years of a lost opportunity for a conservative cause. It doesn't make me happy.
Okay. So now let's go intensely local, and let's go to the U.S. Senate seat that Mitt Romney is not going to seek again. And we've now got Representative John Curtis, who's reconsidering. It was news several weeks ago that he was going to stay where he is. I've got a quote here where he says, "These voices, getting louder and more organized, are increasingly difficult to ignore. Because so many Utahns have asked me to, I'm taking a fresh look." Goodness. That sounds like the writing's on the wall, John.
So taking a fresh look, let's also look at taking a fresh look at the House. Since he made his first decision, Kevin McCarthy's out. We've gone through the chaos of potential speaker, finally getting another speaker. We're at the cusp of shutdowns because we don't have any type of budget action truly taking place. We'll have to see what happens in the next few days. But I think part of this for Congressman Curtis is looking to say, lots has changed. There's more dysfunction in the House. People are wanting me to consider the Senate. The grass might be greener on the other side of the fence.
Interesting. Shireen, I know you'll be quick to point out his political history. You've done it before, at least.
I've done it before. What I will say is I think for me, Congressman Curtis, if he were to be our senator, would be a huge upgrade. Not from Romney necessarily, but certainly from Mike Lee in my perspective. I just find him to be a person who is incredibly serious and also quite open to thinking about some of the things that I care deeply about, including climate change, the climate crisis that we're experiencing, thinking about pulling together productive conversations around these really important issues. I trust him more to be able to do that and to tend to represent our state well and not get into these, anti-democratic sideshows that are absolutely unproductive, I think, for everybody that some of our politicians have got engaged in over the years. I find him to be serious and hardworking, and I appreciate him. I don't align with his politics, but I'd rather be represented by him.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
One of the other dynamics, I think, there's lots of qualified folks in Utah that could run for Congress, could run for the U.S. Senate, that I think they look back there at the dysfunction and the years and stuff of dysfunction, regardless of which party's in control, just going, why would I want to sacrifice my time, my effort, my energy for that? And I'm even starting to hear the young college kids that would go back to work as congressional staffers nowadays saying, why would I want to go back there? Why would I want to work for somebody in Congress?
Right.
Which is, unfortunately, a sad commentary on the culture and dynamics at play.
Yeah. I'll just remind our listeners that current Speaker Brad Wilson, who will resign this week if everything goes as planned and be, superseded by a new speaker, but he's running for this seat. He's a terrific, talented person, great politician, I think a great policy mind. And I think very highly of John Curtis as well. So it sets up a very competitive Senate race if this follows through.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It would be interesting to see. I feel like Brad Wilson, in my kind of perception of him as just a citizen, does not engage with the media a lot. There's not a ton of places to go and look to hear how he's thinking about or talking about things. There's certainly a record of what he's gotten done. And I do think he often focuses on things that are important. I think about the lake, the leadership he's stepped into there, and some different things that are nice to see. But are these two candidates wildly different, or does one just have better name ID? Well, I mean, I think we'll see what happens.
Stay tuned.
Well, we've got a couple other names in there. We've got a former staffer of Mike Lee, Carolyn Phippen, who announced recently, the mayor of Riverton has announced, Trent Staggs. We've got my understanding, I haven't seen any official announcement, but rumors that the mayor of Roosevelt is planning to jump in the race, or
I think
has he jumped in the race?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, well, there's a lot. Now, John, Representative Blake Moore, he's now elected to fill Speaker Mike Johnson's spot in House GOP leadership. That is a huge deal.
Out of the frying pan into the fire.
That's a huge deal.
Yeah.
And for anyone that interacts
very,
with...
very junior.
Yeah, with anyone that interacts with Blake Moore, he's very self-deprecating. He's quite humble, wicked smart. He's got physical stature.
He's tall.
A tall guy, and from everything
He's got that quarterback presence.
Yeah, from everything I can see, he is really acquitting himself really well in the U.S. Congress.
Yeah, I think this is clearly he's got respect of his colleagues to move into this kind of position and stuff like that, especially so quickly in his time in the House.
Yeah, we also know that these are jobs that people do not want to do. So I hope he's able to navigate it deftly, and I hope that Typically what happens, and you would have more to say on this, Natalie, than I'd certainly do, or more insight on this, but when we have people in these leadership roles, it can pay huge dividends back to your state.
sure.
So it is really exciting to have
You're
somebody
at the table
there.
when
You're at the
decisions are
table.
made.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that can mean investments on everything from roads to, addressing when you think about, I don't know if I'd be happy with it, but thinking about greater focus on our public lands. So it can really make a difference to have somebody at the table.
Let's go to the Chris Stewart race, Shireen, you're so familiar with.
Yeah.
And we've got the Democrat Kathleen Reeby.
The CD2 race.
Yeah. And then we've got Representative Celeste Malloy. As we go into the final stretch here, it looks like Malloy is holding on to more cash, maybe in a better position this way.
Sure. She's also taking money from corporate PACs. That is not something that Reeby is doing. Democrats in the state typically don't. There is, I would say, there are huge differences between these candidates. If you want somebody who is going to really be thinking about what it means for you to live freely, to actually have freedom, check out Reeby. If you want to talk about people who understand what it's like in our public school systems, she spent many years as a professional in that setting. These are really different candidates. Somebody who is on the ground working for everyday Utahns, or somebody who has spent the last number of years outside of the state really working in the swamp, I have to say. So, what kind of perspective are they going to bring? What kind of energy will they bring? Who are they going to have on their minds? I suggest people take a look at Reeby.
I laugh when I see Kathleen's ads on TV talking about getting the government out of public ed as she's going back to Congress, which I really don't believe should have a role in public ed. And yet I don't think she's wanting to get the federal government out of public ed. So it's kind of a...
Depends on issues. When we think about things like access for students with disabilities, there certainly should be a role at the federal level. When we think about, I would even say like large scale infrastructure around our schools, how we're funding and creating programs that help educate students that can meet the demands of the future. I do think that there is some role for Washington in that, and I think she'd be a strong advocate.
I disagree there, because I think too often what happens is you get federal spending and federal regulation, you don't actually get what you're wanting to get.
Yeah. John, I want to hear your comments, going very local here, about both Governor Herbert and Governor Cox endorsing Salt Lake City Mayor Aaron Mendenhall. What did you make of that? I saw it, and it caught my eye because, maybe they often don't weigh in on a nonpartisan city race, but they both did.
Yeah, no, I find that interesting. Clearly, Rocky has those that are staunch supporters of his. From the state perspective, Rocky has also caused lots of problems and issues over the years. And so I think there's an element of what kind of mayhem will come as a result of Rocky being mayor again. I had to deal with the legacy highway issues and problems as a result of his fighting that.
Fair to say it cost the state tens of millions of dollars.
Hundreds of millions of dollars. Hundreds of millions of dollars as a result of that.
To get an alignment that was about the same as originally
substantially
proposed.
the same, yeah.
Just think about that one for a minute, Shireen.
So I think there's a dynamic which is, okay, we've seen that act before. Let's go with the other person. And I think Aaron has played nicely with them in the past. Mm-hmm. But I am still a little surprised of them jumping into endorsing that race. And then, Rocky's response is, I'm now reminded of why I affiliated a Republican to vote for John Huntsman Jr.
Shireen, I'm just wondering what your take is on, we're going into a major election here, a ranked choice voting election, and I have seen precious little polling about how this is going to all turn out in our capital city. Are you the same?
I'm of the same mind. I don't know that we have a ton of good public polling. I'm not sure that even the polling that exists, that campaigns often do, I'm not sure how robust it is.
So they're blind in some ways going into this.
Yeah. So I would just say for people listening, if you live in Utah, our election day got delayed because of the special election in the 2nd District. And you will be able to vote until Tuesday, November 21st. And so
in person.
That's in person.
Mail it the day before.
Mail it the day before. Get that thing postmarked. If it's sitting on your counter, just do it now. Why not do it now?
Mm-hmm. We have just over a minute in the program. John, can you reflect for just a minute about why M. Russell Ballard's passing is a big deal to our state and why people of all faiths should care about that? I have thought on that, but I'm just curious what you think. And Shireen, you're welcome to weigh in as well.
Well, it's just one of those things. I think he was somebody who cared a lot about Utah legacy. He cared about people worldwide and stuff like that. My most recent event with him was Days of 47, celebrating Pioneer Day, and they recognized him for his dedicated service to the community and stuff like that. And Representative Garth Ballard, I reached out to her to extend best wishes. That's her father-in-law who just passed, and I know the difficulty on the family.
Yeah.
Natalie, how about you?
Well, I just say that he was someone that got involved in civic matters, civic affairs. So you're an apostle in a faith, and you're really thinking about the faith issues confronting your congregations. But he was someone who also cared about just civic duty, patriotism, citizenship, those sorts of things. How does a non-LDS person view it when all of a sudden all the radio stations and TV are all over the death of a Mormon apostle?
I would say this is, it's not always something that makes a ton of sense to me. But I think the question that I have is, what happens now? Can you so how does that change the leadership? How does that change the dynamics going forward?
We get a new person, and we put up our hand and honor them and support them.
Yeah.
So, all right. Great program, everyone. Natalie Gochner with Shireen Gorbani and John Dougal. Programs produced by Anthony Scoma. Thanks, everybody, for listening.